Ever wondered where your sense of loneliness comes from? Why all your relationships have the same pattern? Or why the partners you attract seem to have the same character traits, even when you badly crave different relationship dynamics? As an infant, you depend on your caretakers in practically everything, including your life. One cannot feed or protect themselves at that time. Abandonment is a primal fear for everyone, as it spells lack of safety in a child's mind. If a child is abandoned, he or she perceives it as a traumatic experience and stores it in that way in his or her memory, mind, and body, which in turn affects them. Abandonment wounds are mostly implanted on us right after we are born. Envision a newborn infant in a completely new environment. Ever noticed how they behave? Immediately after a child is born, it's placed in a nursery to be monitored and allowed to bond with its mother in specific scheduled times. New mothers and parents have always been advised to let their babies cry it out in their cribs. Babies don't speak, they whimper and cry to have their needs met when they're hungry or their diaper soiled or are uncomfortable, as they can't help themselves. If no one tends to them, they cry some more. After a while, they get exhausted and go to sleep. On the contrary, parents believe the infant is crying because it wants to be picked up, and that if they went in the baby's room and did that, it will become spoiled. As such, once the baby is quiet, they think that their assumptions were right. In their mind, they won the battle, or it suited itself, went back to sleep, and they went back to their business as usual. Have you experienced such a pattern in newborn parents throughout the first year of infancy and beyond? The mistake most parents do is think that once the baby is fed and changed, perhaps according to the instructions from pediatricians and others, it has no reason to cry, and hence ignored. The child's cries, not much different than raising a pet really. The sad bit is that sometimes parents don't realize that leaving an infant to cry in its crib essentially instills abandonment wounds that stay with a person for the rest of their life. This teaches children instead that they can't trust the world. See now why parenting needs to be intentional as early as when a child is a day old. We then have generations of people with abandonment wounds, and they keep transferring to their kids. So what exactly is abandonment? This is when someone you consider significant discards, devalues, dismisses, or does not acknowledge you. An abandoned person may feel neglected, ignored, unlovable, unworthy, that you are not enough, empty, invisible, not belonging, or rejected. Abandonment wounds are not as a result of necessarily someone physically abandoning you. There are many different ways it can be manifested in a person. We are all unique and perceive things differently. It is important to note that no one's wound is less important over another person's. The following are incidences that cause abandonment wounds, especially after the first year of infancy. They include being placed in daycare while the parent goes to work, a parent leaving his or her child, death of a parent, the perception of being deserted by a friend, such as in nursery school, being picked on or bullied in school, a pet dying, being placed up for adoption, or not knowing your birth parents, the feeling of being pushed aside or replaced after the birth of a new sibling, having a parent or caregiver who is emotionally unavailable, such as in the event of a parent who is a workaholic, alcoholic, or addicted to drugs, or a narcissistic, being the recipient of emotional, physical, or sexual abuse, being unseen or misunderstood by parents or caregivers, being shamed for having human emotions, one's parents divorcing, a child with a serious illness watching his friends play and grow up, a little child wanting the parents to come pick him or her up from nursery school, yet they don't, having a parent who is a perfectionist and who only shows affection when their child lives up to the expectations, being treated poorly by a teacher at school. When a parent is emotionally unavailable or immature, they are self-preoccupied and uncomfortable with their own needs. They may become nervous and angry if a child becomes upset, punishing them instead of comforting them. As a child, were you told that emotions like sadness and anger were not okay? If so, you might have learned to hide or suppress them, which is very unhealthy. You experience emotions for a reason. They are there to communicate to you. And there's nothing like good or bad emotions. All emotions are important. Learn to heed to them and seek what they're communicating to you. So, how do abandonment wounds show up in one's life? A child who experiences distress will do whatever is necessary to get some kind of connection with a parent. Ever seen children who act out to get attention? Second, you normalize putting other people's needs before your own. Next, have avoidant attachment issues, which is avoiding intimacy with others. Having anxious attachment issues, whereby you do not feel secure in relationships. Being able to convince others you have few emotional needs of your own and having trouble asking for or accepting help. Eager to grow up fast. Often settle for emotional loneliness in relationships because it feels normal to you. Audition for love in relationships. Those who lacked emotional engagement in their childhood often can't believe someone would want to have a relationship with them just because of who they are, but because of what they can offer. And in most cases, they are the same people who do what it takes to make others love them. They're also people please a lot so that the other people can love them. You reject yourself in relationships. You break up with a person first to avoid being left in the end. Believe if you want closeness, you have to play a role that puts others first. You expect to get rejection and neglect from others just as your parents neglected you. You have a strong need for love and affection, but never seeming to get it. Choosing a partner and bonding over trauma as opposed to a healthy relationship with a healthy individual. You suffer repeated patterns in relationships where you feel like all you have done is change partners, but all your relationships have been similar. What we need to note is these are toxic patterns played out over and over, illustrating how childhood abandonment experiences influence the kinds of partners you choose. Next, love addiction, whereby one can't stay single. They move from one relationship to another without taking time to heal and process things after a breakup. Resort to quick fixes, and they need to satisfy something now, that is instant gratification. Addictions to either drugs, alcohol, sex, shopping, video games, binge watching, to numb out the core feelings. Convinced that you will be bothering others if you made your own needs known to them. Having no boundaries, and this is costly. Self-esteem issues, and lastly, experiencing depression or anxiety. Most of the time, our caretakers, be it mother, father, or grandparents, do not realize they are traumatizing their own children, as they were not taught or do not know better. They keep doing this as it is a pattern, and this type of trauma is passed from generation to generation. You may often wonder why you see yourself in the same types of relationships that your parents had, or why you continue attracting and dating the same type of people that you so desperately do not want to attract. It's because that is what you're comfortable with. That is the type of relationship you're used to and know how to be in it. It feels normal. It feels like home. To an extent, if and when you attract healthy relationships, you feel that it's not for you. It feels foreign. Oftentimes, we attract the same person that left us with these abandonment wounds in hopes that we can now heal and prove you're worthy of love. And then when that does not happen, that wound opens up all over again and you feel rejected and alone all over again. Sadly, there are teachers and parents who persist on publicly humiliating and shaming their students or children. Can you see the impact of being ignored and shamed at home only to perceive the same treatment in school? Abandonment is experienced differently according to one's level of emotional resilience. Almost everyone has abandonment wounds to heal, and most relationship problems stem from abandonment wounds. What happens is, we always stay enmeshed with toxic partners in a perpetual circle of repetition, compulsion, and varying states of stress and panic, which you often become addicted to. Being in an actively triggered emotional state seriously jeopardizes the rational brain function and possibilities for healing. Join me next week as I will be looking at how to heal or overcome abandonment wounds and trauma.